The massive trade station called Kepler's Gate floated in the darkness of space like a metal city. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its many ports, bringing traders, diplomats, and tourists from hundreds of different worlds. But today was special. Today was the Centennial Fleet Review, an event that happened only once every 100 years. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of her ship, watching the alien vessels arrive. Each one was more impressive than the last. The Zephyrian Empire brought their crystal ships that looked like living diamonds. These ships caught the light from nearby stars and threw it back in brilliant rainbows. They moved through space like dancers, smooth and graceful. The Corvin Hegemony arrived next with their bioships. These weren't built in factories like normal ships. Instead, they were grown like plants or animals. Their hulls pulsed with a slow heartbeat, and strange organic weapons grew from their sides like thorns on a rose. The ships breathed through vents that opened and closed like gills on a fish. Then came the Etherian Collective. Their ships didn't look solid at all. They appeared to be made of pure energy, like captured lightning or bottled starfire. They shifted and changed shape as they moved, sometimes looking like comets and other times like small suns. The very air around them shimmered with power. Sarah looked down at her own ship and almost laughed. The UES Defiance looked like someone had built it in their garage using spare parts. Its hull was gray metal covered in patches where repairs had been made over the years. Compared to the beautiful alien ships, it looked like a flying toolbox. "Captain," said Lieutenant Rodriguez, her second in command. "The docking master is asking for our credentials again." "Third time today," Sarah said with a smile. "I think they're having trouble believing we belong here." She wasn't wrong. As the Defiance slowly moved toward its assigned docking port, other ships gave it a wide berth. Some alien crews could be seen pointing and laughing through their viewports. A few ships even changed course to get a better look at the ugly human vessel. The docking process took longer than usual. The station's automated systems kept running extra scans on the Defiance, as if they couldn't believe such a crude ship could actually fly. Sarah didn't mind. She used the time to study the alien ships through her telescope. "Impressive, aren't they?" said Chief Engineer Martinez as he joined her on the observation deck. "Very," Sarah agreed. "Look at those crystal formations on the Zephyrian ships. I bet they channel energy more efficiently than anything we've ever built. And those Corvin bioships," Martinez added. "Self-healing hulls, organic weapons that grow back when damaged. Pretty clever. Don't forget the Etherians," said Rodriguez. "Ships made of pure energy. No physical weaknesses at all." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "All very advanced. All very beautiful. All very predictable." Her crew exchanged glances. They knew that look in their captain's eyes. It was the same look she got when she was working on a particularly difficult puzzle. Finally, the Defiance docked with a loud clang that echoed through the station. Sarah could imagine the alien crews wincing at the crude sound. Their ships probably docked silently, using advanced magnetic fields or energy beams. The welcoming ceremony was held in the station's central plaza, a huge space with a transparent dome that showed the stars above. Representatives from all the major powers gathered to meet each other and show off their finest military officers. Admiral Zethek of the Zephyrian Empire stood nearly 3 meters tall, his crystalline body reflecting light like a living prism. When he spoke, his voice chimed like crystal bells. "Behold the glory of Zephyrian engineering," he announced, gesturing toward his ships through the dome. 5,000 years of advancement, perfected to aesthetic and functional beauty. War singer Gorthak of the Corvin Hegemony was the opposite, a hulking creature covered in organic armor that seemed to grow from his own body. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "The Corvin way is the way of life itself," he growled. "Our ships live, breathe, and fight as we do. They are not mere machines, but extensions of our will." The Etherian representative was harder to look at directly. Ambassador Luminous appeared to be made of the same energy as their ships, constantly shifting between different forms. When it spoke, the words seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The Etherian collective has transcended the need for crude matter. We have become one with the fundamental forces of the universe itself." Then it was Sarah's turn. She stepped forward in her simple blue uniform, looking very small and ordinary next to the impressive alien representatives. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Defiance," she said simply. "We're honored to be here." The silence that followed was awkward. The aliens clearly expected more. Some boast about human technology or achievements. Instead, Sarah just stood there with a pleasant smile. Admiral Zythek was the first to break the silence. His crystalline features arranged themselves into what might have been amusement. "Your ship is interesting, Captain Chen, very primitive in design." "Yes," Sarah agreed cheerfully. "We built it with what we had. And what you had was apparently scrap metal and good intentions," rumbled Warsinger Gorthak. Several alien observers made sounds that might have been laughter. Ambassador Luminous pulsed with different colors as it spoke. Perhaps humanity would benefit from a few more millennia of technological development before attempting to join civilized space. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "You might be right. We're still learning." Her humble response only seemed to encourage the aliens. Admiral Zythek gestured toward the viewing dome where their ships were visible. "Perhaps you would like a tour of a real warship, Captain? The Zephyrian Dreadnought Starbreaker could show you what advanced engineering looks like." "That's very kind," Sarah replied, "though I should probably stick with my own ship. It's temperamental and needs constant attention." "I imagine it does," said Warsinger Gorthak with what sounded like a chuckle. "Primitive technology often requires such hands-on maintenance." The conversation continued in this vein for nearly an hour. The alien representatives took turns making polite but pointed comments about human technological inferiority. They spoke about their ship's advanced weapons, their efficient engines, their sophisticated armor systems. Through it all, Sarah listened politely and asked simple questions that made her sound even more primitive and backward. As the ceremony concluded, Sarah could hear the aliens talking among themselves. They spoke in their own languages, but her translation device picked up words like amusing, pathetic, and barely space-worthy. "Captain," whispered Lieutenant Rodriguez as they walked back to their ship. "Are we really going to let them talk to us like that?" Sarah's smile never wavered. "Let them talk, Lieutenant. Words are just air moving around. What matters is what comes next. And what comes next?" Sarah paused at the airlock of the Defiance and looked back at the beautiful alien ships floating around the station. "Next, they're going to learn why you should never judge a book by its cover." As the crew returned to their ship, none of the aliens noticed the small scanning devices that had been quietly recording everything during the ceremony. They didn't see the subtle sensor sweeps that had analyzed their ship's energy signatures. And they certainly didn't realize that every casual boast about their superior technology had just given the humans exactly the information they needed. The Defiance might look like a flying junkyard, but its crew was about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that doesn't look dangerous at all. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor to the Defiance. Admiral Zythek himself came aboard, ducking slightly to fit through the human-sized corridors. His crystalline form reflected the ship's harsh lighting in strange patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice chiming through the metal hallways, "I have a proposal for you." Sarah met him in the ship's small conference room, which looked even more cramped with the tall alien inside. "I'm listening, Admiral." "Last night, the fleet commanders had a discussion," Zythek began. "We realize that humanity is new to galactic society. You lack the experience that comes from centuries of spacefaring civilization." "That's true," Sarah agreed. "We've only been out here for about 50 years, exactly, which is why we would like to offer you a learning opportunity." The Admiral's crystal face attempted what might have been a smile, a friendly military exercise. "Nothing serious, of course, just a chance for you to see how real space combat works." Sarah leaned back in her chair. "What kind of exercise?" "Simple war games. Your ship against a small squadron from our combined fleets. All weapons would be set to simulation mode naturally. No real damage would be done." "How small a squadron?" "Oh, just 12 ships total. 4 from each of our major powers. Nothing too overwhelming." Zythek's tone was casual, as if he was discussing the weather. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. 12 against 1 were terrible odds, even in a simulation. The alien ships were faster, more advanced, and more heavily armed than anything humanity had ever built. It would be like sending a rowboat against a fleet of destroyers. "That's very generous," she said finally. "But I'm not sure my ship is ready for that kind of exercise." "Oh, but we insist," said Zythek. "Consider it a gift to humanity. A chance to learn from your betters before you get yourself into real trouble out here." The word betters hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah's crew members, who had been quietly listening from the hallway, felt their hands clench into fists, but their captain remained calm. "When would this exercise take place?" she asked. Tomorrow, if you're agreeable. We've already identified a suitable location, the Graveyard System. It's a dead star system with no inhabited planets, perfect for military exercises. Sarah knew the Graveyard System. It was 3 hours away at maximum speed, far from any witnesses or help. If something went wrong during the friendly exercise, there would be no one around to see it. We'll need time to prepare, she said. Of course. We wouldn't want you to feel unprepared. Scythek stood to leave, then paused. Oh, and Captain? The exercise will be broadcast live to Kepler's Gate. Many beings are interested in seeing how humanity performs in its first real military demonstration. After the Admiral left, Sarah called her senior staff together. The conference room felt crowded with just 6 humans inside, but they made it work. So, said Chief Engineer Martinez, they want to humiliate us in front of the entire galaxy. Looks that way, Sarah agreed. 12 ships against 1 with everyone watching. We could refuse, suggested Lieutenant Rodriguez. Make some excuse about technical problems, and prove that humans are cowards as well as primitive, added Weapons. Officer Kim. That would really help our reputation. Sarah looked around the table at her crew. These men and women had served with her for 5 years, through pirate attacks, equipment failures, and diplomatic disasters. They trusted her judgment completely. What do you think, Chief? She asked Martinez. Can we do this? The engineer was quiet for a long moment, running calculations in his head. Depends on what this means, Captain. If you're asking whether we can win a straight fight against 12 advanced alien warships, the answer is no, not a chance. But, Sarah prompted, but if you're asking whether we can give them a surprise they'll never forget. Martinez grinned. Well, that's a different question entirely. Over the next 18 hours, the crew of the Defiance worked with quiet efficiency. To outside observers, they appeared to be running standard pre-flight checks and minor repairs. The alien ship's sensors detected nothing unusual, just humans doing maintenance on their primitive vessel. They didn't notice the special equipment being quietly installed in the Defiance's cargo bays. They missed the software updates being uploaded to the ship's computers. And they certainly didn't see the careful modifications being made to the ship's weapon systems. As word of the exercise spread through Kepler's Gate, beings from across the galaxy began placing bets. The odds were heavily against humanity. Most bookmakers wouldn't even take bets on a human victory. The outcome seemed too obvious. 5 minutes, declared Commander Vex of the Corvin fleet. That's how long the human ship will last before surrendering. You're being generous, replied Captain Flux of the Etherian contingent. I calculate they'll last exactly 7.3 minutes before their primitive systems fail completely. I give them 10 minutes, rumbled Admiral Zythek. Humans are stubborn, if nothing else. They'll keep fighting even when it's hopeless. None of them considered the possibility that the humans might actually win. It simply wasn't conceivable. The technological gap was too wide, the numerical advantage too great. The morning of the exercise, the Defiance undocked from Kepler's Gate and began its journey to the Graveyard System. The alien ships followed at a respectful distance, their crews confident and relaxed. This would be little more than target practice. During the 3-hour journey, Sarah walked through her ship one final time. She visited each department, checking on preparations and talking to her crew. Everyone knew their job and everyone was ready. In engineering, Martinez was making final adjustments to systems that had never appeared on any official blueprint. All green, Captain. We're as ready as we'll ever be. In the weapons bay, Officer Kim was running diagnostics on equipment that looked nothing like standard human armaments. Weapons ready, Captain. All special packages loaded and armed. In the communications center, Rodriguez was monitoring alien transmissions. They're still treating this like a joke, Captain. Talking about what they'll have for dinner after the exercise. Sarah nodded. Let them stay confident. It makes things easier. As they approached the Graveyard System, the dead star came into view, a white dwarf that had burned through its fuel millions of years ago. The system's planets had been stripped of their atmospheres long ago, leaving only bare rock floating in the darkness. The alien fleet spread out into battle formation. 4 sleek Zephyrian crystal ships took the high position, their faceted hulls gleaming like jewels. 4 massive Corvin bioships moved to flank the humans, their organic weapons already beginning to glow with stored energy. 4 Etherian energy ships positioned themselves directly ahead, their plasma forms crackling with barely contained power. The Defiance moved slowly into the center of the formation, looking like a chunk of space debris that had wandered into the wrong neighborhood. Its gray hull was scarred and patched, its engines produced visible exhaust, and its weapons appeared to be simple projectile cannons from a bygone era. "All ships, this is Admiral Zythek," came the transmission. "Exercise will begin in 60 seconds. Remember, this is a learning experience for our human friends. Try not to disable them too quickly." Laughter echoed across the communication channels from the alien crews. They were looking forward to this. Sarah sat in her captain's chair watching the countdown timer on her screen. 50 seconds, 40, 30. "All stations report ready, Captain," said Rodriguez. "Weapons charged and locked," reported Kim. "Engineering standing by," added Martinez. 20 seconds. 10. "Remember," Sarah said quietly to her crew, "we're not just fighting for ourselves today. We're fighting for every human who's ever been called primitive. Every person who's been told they don't belong. 5 seconds. Show them what humans can do." The timer reached 0, and the exercise began. The first shots came from the Zephyrian ships. Beams of pure crystal energy lanced across space, each one containing enough power to vaporize a small asteroid. They struck the Defiance dead center, lighting up its hull in brilliant flashes that could be seen from Kepler's gate. "Direct hits," announced one of the Zephyrian gunners. "Target should be disabled." But when the energy discharge faded, the human ship was still there. Chunks of metal armor had been blown away from its hull, revealing what looked like more armor underneath. The Defiance continued forward, apparently undamaged. "Curious," muttered Admiral Zythek. "Their armor is more effective than expected." The Corvin bioships opened fire next. Organic projectiles burst from their living cannons, acidic spores that could eat through the strongest metals, plasma pods that exploded on contact, and neural disruptors designed to shut down electronic systems. All of them found their target. The human ship shuddered under the impacts. More pieces of its outer hull were torn away, and sparks flew from what appeared to be damaged systems. It began to move more slowly, as if its engines were failing. "Now they're starting to feel it," growled Warsinger Gorthak with satisfaction. The Etherian ships attacked last, sending waves of pure energy that could disrupt molecular bonds. These weapons didn't just damage their targets, they unmade them at the atomic level. The attacks washed over the Defiance like invisible fire. For a moment, the human ship disappeared entirely in a cloud of disrupted matter. When it cleared, the Defiance was still there, but now it looked like it was barely holding together. Its hull was breached in a dozen places, debris was floating around it, and its energy readings were dropping rapidly. "Excellent work," Admiral Zythek announced. "A few more volleys should finish them." The alien crews were already celebrating their easy victory. Some were taking bets on whether the humans would surrender before their ship was completely destroyed. Others were discussing what to have for lunch after this brief exercise. None of them noticed that the Defiance's apparent damage followed a very specific pattern. The breaches in its hull were exactly where armor panels had been designed to blow away. The debris field around it contained no critical components, and its energy readings were dropping because power was being diverted from non-essential systems to other purposes. Captain Sarah Chen sat in her command chair, watching her tactical display with a calm expression. "Status report," she said quietly. "Ablative armor performing perfectly, Captain," reported Chief Martinez. "All outer layers removed as planned. Ship is now in combat configuration. Weapons. All special packages ready for deployment," said Officer Kim. "Targeting solutions locked on all enemy vessels. Communications? We're receiving their transmissions, Captain," said Rodriguez. "They think we're about to surrender." Sarah almost smiled. "Let them think that for a few more seconds." The Defiance continued its slow, apparently damaged approach toward the alien fleet. To the watching crews, it looked like a wounded animal stumbling toward its predators. They prepared to deliver the killing blow. That's when the first Corvin bioship simply stopped working. The massive living vessel, which had been pulsing with biological energy just moments before, suddenly went dark. Its organic weapons retracted into dormant buds. Its breathing vents sealed shut. The ship didn't explode or break apart, it just fell asleep. "Bioship 7 is not responding," reported one of the Corvin commanders. "All biological functions have ceased." "Technical malfunction," growled Warsinger Gorthak. "Continue the attack." But 30 seconds later, a second Corvin ship went dormant. Then a third. The massive bioships were shutting down one by one, as if some invisible force was putting them to sleep. The Corvin crews frantically tried to wake their ships, but nothing worked. The vessels were alive but unresponsive, like animals that had been tranquilized. "What is happening to our ships?" Gorthak demanded. Before anyone could answer, the Zephyrian vessels began having problems of their own. The beautiful crystal formations that made up their hulls started to vibrate. At first it was barely noticeable, just a slight tremor in the otherwise perfect structures. But the vibrations grew stronger and more violent with each passing second. "Resonance cascade detected," reported a Zephyrian officer, his crystalline voice cracking with strain. "Hull integrity compromised." Admiral Zythek watched in horror as his ships began to shake themselves apart. The crystal matrices that channeled energy so efficiently were now working against them, amplifying the destructive vibrations until the very structure of the ships began to fail. "Shut down all energy systems," he ordered. "Emergency stop on all crystal resonance chambers," but it was too late. The cascade had already begun. One by one, the Zephyrian ships lost, their perfect crystalline shapes as stress fractures, spread through their hulls like spiderwebs. The Etherian ships tried to maintain their distance from whatever was affecting the other vessels, but they soon discovered they weren't safe either. Their carefully controlled plasma fields began to fluctuate wildly, as if someone was playing with the fundamental forces that held them together. "Electromagnetic interference detected," reported one of the Etherian commanders. "Unknown source. Field coherence dropping rapidly." Ambassador Luminous, monitoring the battle from Kepler's gate, pulsed with confused colors. "This is impossible. Our energy matrices are perfectly stable." But stability was exactly what the Etherian ships were losing. Their plasma forms began to flicker and distort like flames in a strong wind. The elegant energy patterns that made up their hulls became chaotic and unpredictable. Back on Kepler's gate, the watching crowd had gone silent. What was supposed to be an easy victory demonstration had turned into something else entirely. The primitive human ship was somehow disabling advanced alien vessels without even appearing to fire a shot. "How are they doing this?" whispered a draconian observer. "Their weapons," said a Centaurian analyst studying the sensor readings. "Look at their weapons." For the first time, beings throughout the station began to really examine the human ship's weapon systems. What they had dismissed as primitive projectile cannons were actually something far more sophisticated. The Defiance was broadcasting a complex pattern of sound, electromagnetic, and biological signals, each one perfectly tuned to exploit a specific weakness in alien technology. The sonic resonators were causing the Zephyrian crystal hulls to vibrate at their natural frequency, tearing them apart from within. The electromagnetic pulse generators were disrupting the Etherian energy fields, causing them to collapse into random plasma clouds. And the biowarfare systems were releasing engineered viruses that targeted the neural networks of Corvin bioships, putting them into protective hibernation. "They've been studying us," Admiral Zythek realized with growing horror. "They know our weaknesses," it was true. For years, human observers had been quietly learning everything they could about alien technology. Every trade negotiation, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic meeting had been an opportunity to gather intelligence. The aliens had dismissed humans as primitive and harmless, never realizing they were being carefully analyzed. Now that analysis was paying off. The Defiance had been built not to match alien technology but to counter it. Every system on the ship was designed to exploit a specific vulnerability that the humans had discovered in their enemies' advanced designs. "All ships," came Captain Chen's voice over the communication channels. "This is your final warning. Stand down immediately or face complete systems failure." The alien commanders looked at their disabled fleets in shock. Half their ships were already out of action, and the rest were suffering increasing damage from the human weapons. The primitive vessel they had come to humiliate was systematically destroying them without breaking a sweat. "This is impossible," muttered Admiral Zythek. "We are the advanced races. We have technology beyond their understanding." "And yet," said Captain Chen's calm voice, "your ships are the ones that are broken." For the first time in the exercise, the alien crews began to feel something they hadn't experienced in centuries: fear. The humans weren't just winning. They were demonstrating a level of tactical thinking and technological adaptation that made their own advances look clumsy and predictable. The beautiful Efficient alien designs that had taken millennia to perfect were being torn apart by what looked like flying scrap metal. And the worst part was the humans were making it look easy. "How?" whispered war singer Gorthak. "How did you know?" Captain Chen's response was quiet but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Because while you were building your pretty ships, we were preparing for war." What happened next wasn't a battle. It was a lesson in the difference between beauty and efficiency, between elegance and ruthlessness. The Defiance moved through the alien formation like a shark among goldfish, systematically dismantling each vessel with cold precision. The remaining Zephyrian ships tried to fight back, but their crystal energy weapons were useless against the human vessel. Every beam they fired was absorbed by strange black panels that had emerged from the Defiance's hull. The panels seemed to drink in the energy and convert it into power for the human ship's own systems. Impossible. Admiral Zythek gasped as his flagship's main cannon fired repeatedly with no effect. "Our weapons are the most advanced in the galaxy." "Advanced, yes," came Captain Chen's voice over the comm. "But predictable." The human ship's response was swift and terrible. A new weapon emerged from the Defiance's belly, a massive sonic projector that looked like it had been built from salvaged mining equipment. When it fired, it didn't produce light or heat. Instead, it generated sound waves specifically tuned to the resonant frequency of Zephyrian crystal. The effect was immediate and devastating. The remaining crystal ships began to sing, a beautiful haunting melody that grew louder and more complex with each passing second. But the music was their death song. The carefully grown crystal matrices that formed their hulls couldn't withstand the harmonic vibrations. They shattered like wine glasses struck by an opera singer's high note. The Zephyrian crews had just enough time to evacuate before their ships broke apart into millions of glittering fragments. The pieces floated in space like a galaxy of diamonds, beautiful and completely useless. The Corvin bioships tried a different approach. Since their vessels were still alive, they attempted to adapt to the human weapons. Bioships were famous for their ability to evolve defenses against new threats. The living hulls began to sprout new organs and develop immune systems designed to fight off the human bioweapons. But the humans had planned for this too. The Defiance launched a second wave of biowarfare agents, not viruses this time, but engineered bacteria that fed on the same nutrients the bioships used to stay alive. The bacteria didn't attack the ships directly. Instead, they simply ate their food. The mighty Corvin vessels began to starve. Their organic weapons withered and died. Their living armor grew thin and weak. The ships themselves began to shut down non-essential functions to conserve energy. But it wasn't enough. One by one, they fell into deep hibernation to avoid starvation. Warsinger Gorthak watched his fleet die with growing rage and disbelief. "This is not war," he roared. "This is butchery. These tactics are dishonorable." "Honor is a luxury for those who can afford to lose," Captain Chen replied. "We can't." The Etherian ships made a final desperate attempt to escape the slaughter. Their energy-based forms gave them incredible speed and maneuverability. They scattered in all directions, hoping their ability to phase in and out of normal space would let them avoid the human weapons. But the Defiance was ready for this too. The ship deployed a network of small probes that spread throughout the battle area like a spider's web. Each probe generated a localized electromagnetic field designed to disrupt energy-based matter. The Etherian ships found themselves trapped in a maze of interference zones that made it impossible to maintain their energy forms. Ambassador Luminous, still monitoring from Kepler's gate, pulsed with colors of fear and confusion. "They have turned our own nature against us. How did they learn to do this?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elizabeth Santos, the human cultural attaché who had been quietly observing alien society for the past 5 years, stepped forward at the observation deck. "Because you taught us," she said simply. "Every time you showed us your beautiful ships, you told us how they worked. Every time you bragged about your advanced technology, you revealed its principles. You were so certain of your superiority that you never considered we might use that information against you." The watching aliens began to understand the terrible scope of human planning. This hadn't been a lucky victory or a brilliant improvisation. This had been years in the making. A careful and methodical study of every major galactic power's strengths and weaknesses. Back in the battle zone, the last Etherian ship was falling apart as its energy matrix collapsed under electromagnetic interference. The pilot managed to send one final transmission before his vessel dissolved into random plasma. They knew, he whispered. They knew everything. Within 30 minutes of the exercise beginning, 11 of the 12 alien ships were disabled or destroyed. Only Admiral Zythek's command ship remained functional, and it was badly damaged. The beautiful crystal hull was cracked in a dozen places, and many of its systems had failed completely. The Defiance approached the crippled vessel slowly, its ugly bulk somehow more menacing than any sleek warship. The human ship looked exactly the same as it had at the beginning of the battle, scarred, patched, and crude. But now everyone understood that its appearance was a weapon in itself. "Admiral," Captain Chen's voice was calm and professional. "Do you surrender?" Zythek looked around his ruined bridge. Half his crew was unconscious from crystal resonance feedback. His weapons were offline, his engines were barely functional, and the human ship hadn't even taken serious damage. "How?" he asked quietly. "How did you defeat us so easily?" "Because you made the same mistake everyone makes when they look at humans," Chen replied. "You saw what you expected to see. You saw primitive technology and crude construction. You didn't see the intelligence behind it. The truth was beginning to dawn on beings across the galaxy who were watching the exercise. The Defiance wasn't crude because humans lacked the ability to build better ships. It was crude because crude was effective. Every ugly plate and exposed cable served a purpose. Every apparent flaw was actually a strength. The ship's armor wasn't just metal plating. It was a sophisticated ablative system designed to absorb and dissipate energy attacks. The visible exhaust from its engines wasn't inefficiency. It was a decoy to hide the ship's true propulsion system. Even the rust stains on its hull served a purpose, making it look older and more vulnerable than it actually was. "Your technology is beautiful," Captain Chen continued. "Elegant, efficient, and completely specialized. Our technology is ugly, crude, and adaptable. When your crystal weapons stopped working, you had no backup plan. When our projectile weapons failed, we switched to sonic attacks. When those didn't work, we used electromagnetic pulse. When that wasn't enough, we deployed bioweapons." She paused, letting the lesson sink in. "Beauty has its place, Admiral. But in war, function matters more than form." The alien crews were beginning to understand that they hadn't just lost a military exercise. They had been given a demonstration of human military philosophy, and it was terrifying in its implications. While they had spent centuries perfecting their elegant technologies, humans had been preparing for total war. "We studied every ship class in the galaxy," Chen explained. "We cataloged every weapon system, every defense mechanism, every technological advantage you possessed. Then we built a ship specifically designed to counter all of them." "But the resources," protested Admiral Zythek. "The time required for such research." 50 years, Chen said simply. 50 years of careful observation, planning, and preparation. While you saw us as harmless primitives, we were learning everything we could about potential threats. The surviving alien crews began to realize the true scope of what they were facing. The humans hadn't just built one ship to counter their technology. They had likely built dozens, each one specifically designed to fight a different type of enemy. And if this exercise was any indication, those ships were already deployed throughout human space. "This ends the exercise," Captain Chen announced. "All ships are to return to Kepler's Gate for damage assessment and crew medical treatment." As the Defiance began to move away from the battlefield, Admiral Zythek managed one final question. "What happens now, Captain? What do you want from us?" Sarah Chen's answer carried across every communication channel in the system, reaching not just the defeated alien fleets, but every being watching from the trade station. "We want respect, Admiral. Nothing more, nothing less. We want to be treated as equals in galactic society, not as amusing primitives who should be grateful for your tolerance." The message was clear. Humanity had just announced its arrival as a major power, and they had done it in the most effective way possible, by proving that underestimating them was a fatal mistake. The age of human weakness was over. The age of human strength had begun. The journey back to Kepler's Gate was quiet. The alien fleets limped through space, their once proud vessels now broken shells of their former glory. Rescue ships from the trade station were already on their way to collect the crews from the completely destroyed vessels. No one had died, but their pride lay in ruins around them. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the distant lights of the station grow larger. Her ship looked exactly the same as when they had left, scarred, patched, and unremarkable. But everything had changed. "Captain," said Lieutenant Rodriguez quietly, "we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. News of the exercise is spreading fast." "What kind of transmissions?" "All kinds. Some are asking for details about our weapons. Others want to know if we're planning to attack anyone. A few are offering alliance treaties." Rodriguez paused. "And quite a few are asking if we're accepting applications to join the human fleet." Sarah almost smiled at that. "I imagine we are suddenly much more interesting to our galactic neighbors. There's something else, Captain. We're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Zythek. He wants to speak with you privately." The Zephyrian Admiral's image appeared on the main screen. His crystalline features cracked and dim. His ship's bridge was a mess of broken crystal and emergency lighting. But his voice was steady when he spoke. "Captain Chen, I wanted to thank you." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Thank me? For destroying your fleet? For showing restraint?" Zythek's damaged features attempted a smile. "You could have killed us all. Your weapons were certainly capable of it. But you chose to disable rather than destroy, to demonstrate rather than massacre. We're not murderers, Admiral. We're soldiers." "Yes, I am beginning to understand the difference." He paused, looking around his ruined bridge. "May I ask you something, Captain?" "Of course. How long have you been planning this?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "The Defiance specifically?" "About 5 years. But humans have been preparing for this moment since we first learned we weren't alone in the universe." 50 years of preparation," Zythek said slowly, "while we were busy congratulating ourselves on our superiority." "You weren't wrong to be proud of your achievements," Sarah said. "Your technology really is more advanced than ours. Your ships are faster, more efficient, more elegant. But you made one critical mistake, which was, you assumed that advanced meant better. You forgot that sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective one." As they spoke, reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. Every major news network was covering the story of humanity's victory. The footage of beautiful alien ships being destroyed by an ugly human vessel was being broadcast on 1,000 worlds. The reaction was exactly what Sarah had hoped for. Some species were frightened by this display of human capability. Others were impressed, but none of them would ever again dismiss humanity as primitive or harmless. "There's one more thing I need to know," Admiral Zythek said. "How many ships like the Defiance do you have?" Sarah's answer was carefully measured. "Enough, Admiral. We have enough." She didn't tell him about the other vessels already deployed throughout human space. She didn't mention the Retribution, designed specifically to counter Corvin biotechnology. She said nothing about the Equalizer, built to fight Etherian energy ships. And she certainly didn't discuss the dozens of other specialized vessels that were even now patrolling the borders of human territory. The truth was that humanity had built an entire fleet of ships like the Defiance. Each one was designed to look harmless while carrying enough firepower to cripple an entire enemy formation. They were scattered throughout human space, disguised as cargo haulers, mining ships, and exploration vessels. But the galaxy didn't need to know about them. Not yet. When the fleets reached Kepler's gate, the scene was unlike anything in the station's history. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species had gathered to watch the returning ships. The alien vessels were greeted with stunned silence, while the Defiance received something unprecedented: respect. As Sarah walked through the station's corridors, aliens who had been mocking humans just days before now stepped aside respectfully. Some bowed, others simply stared, a few even applauded. But the real change was in the way they looked at her crew. Before the exercise, humans had been seen as amusing pets, tolerated but not taken seriously. Now they were seen as what they really were: a species that had spent 50 years preparing for war, while everyone else thought they were playing at civilization. The formal debriefing took place in the station's main council chamber. Representatives from every major power were present, along with dozens of smaller species who wanted to understand what they had witnessed. Sarah stood at the center of the room, still wearing her simple blue uniform. Around her sat some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and for the first time, they were listening to what a human had to say. "The question everyone is asking," said Counselor Vrex of the Galactic Trade Federation, "is what humanity wants. You have demonstrated that you can destroy any fleet in known space. What are your intentions?" Sarah looked around the room, meeting the eyes of beings who had been dismissing her species just hours before. Our intentions are simple, counselor. We want to be part of galactic civilization. We want to trade, to learn, to grow, but we want to do it as equals, not as junior partners who should be grateful for your attention. And if we refuse to treat you as equals? Asked Warsinger Gorthak, his organic armor still showing damage from the bioweapons. Then you'll discover that the defiance wasn't our only surprise, Sarah replied calmly. The room fell silent. Every being present understood the implication. If humanity had built one ship capable of defeating a combined alien fleet, they had probably built more. Many more. Ambassador Luminous pulsed with nervous colors. How many ships like yours do you possess? That's classified information, Sarah said with a slight smile. But I will say this. The Defiance was just our first-generation design. We've learned a lot since then. The lie was expertly delivered. The Defiance was actually humanity's most advanced warship, packed with 50 years of research and development. But the aliens didn't know that, and Sarah saw no reason to tell them. What do you want from us? Asked Admiral Zythek, who had managed to attend despite his injuries. Recognition, Sarah said simply. We want our territorial claims respected. We want fair trade agreements. We want representation in galactic government proportional to our population and resources. In short, we want what any major power expects. And in return? In return, we'll be good neighbors. We won't attack anyone who doesn't attack us first. We'll honor our treaties and trade agreements. We'll contribute to galactic security and prosperity. Sarah paused. But we will not be anyone's junior partner, and we will not tolerate being treated as primitives. The negotiations that followed lasted for 3 days. When they were finished, humanity had achieved everything it had hoped for. Full membership in the Galactic Council, territorial sovereignty over human space, trade agreements on equal terms with major powers, and most importantly, respect. But the real victory wasn't in the formal agreements. It was in the way aliens now looked at humans when they passed in the corridors. The condescending smiles were gone, replaced by cautious respect and in some cases genuine fear. Word spread quickly throughout the galaxy. The species that everyone had dismissed as harmless primitives had revealed themselves to be master strategists and warriors. Ships that had seemed like flying junkyards were actually sophisticated weapons platforms, and the humble backward humans were actually the galaxy's newest apex predators. As the Defiance prepared to leave Kepler's Gate, Sarah received one final visitor, Dr. Elizabeth Santos, the cultural attaché who had spent years studying alien society. Any regrets, Captain? She asked. Sarah looked out at the stars through her ready room's small viewport. Somewhere out there, alien governments were scrambling to redesign their ships to counter human weapons. Military planners were trying to figure out how to fight an enemy that specialized in turning advanced technology against itself. Diplomats were debating whether to appease or confront this new human threat. No regrets, she said finally. For 50 years they treated us like children playing with toys they didn't understand. Now they know better. Some of them are calling for preemptive strikes against human space, Santos warned. They're scared. Good. Scared neighbors are polite neighbors. Sarah turned from the viewport. Besides, any species that tries to attack us now will discover that the Defiance was just the beginning. As the human ship undocked from Kepler's Gate and headed back toward Earth space, its crew carried with them the satisfaction of a job well done. They had proven that humanity belonged in the galaxy. They had earned respect through strength, and they had sent a message that would echo across the stars for generations to come. The message was simple. Never underestimate humanity. What looks primitive might be sophisticated. What appears weak might be strong, and what seems harmless might be the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. In the depths of space, other human ships received the signal that their mission was complete. The age of human hiding was over. The galaxy now knew what Earth was capable of, and the knowledge would change everything.